Hello PTA members, my name is Ryan Keel. I'm a college planning specialist and the owner of College Smart, and I'm also a very big fan of what you guys do both on a local, state, and national level. I know there's a lot of things that people don't realize you guys do as far as the legislation, but they're the fun things like reflections, the family reading experience. You guys do so much, and I wanted to give back just a little bit. So I put together this video. It's for you parents of seniors. It's a quick walkthrough of the 2021 FAFSA online form. And it's FAFSA season, just kicked off on October 1st. That was the first day to fill this out. So what I did is I made a video walking you through the online process, and I added in some tips, some mistakes to avoid, and hopefully you'll find this helpful. So let's get started. First of all, it's important to know where you are in the overall process of planning for college. We're looking at senior year, FAFSA education and assistance. Okay, let's start by going to fafsa.gov. And that will bring us here. So what you're going to want to do is go to Start Here, new to the FAFSA process. Your next screen will be where you choose who's filling out this information. You can either pick the student or the parent. So I'm going to pick the parent. Okay, then you enter the student's information, name, social security number, date of birth. Now this is important too. I would highly recommend that you click the show SSN number just so you know what you typed in, because if there's a typo there and you're off by one number, it can cause a pretty big headache down the road. So just check it out, make sure you got it right, then click next. Next page is the legal speak, so accept that. And then here you're going to want to click Start 2021-2022 FAFSA. Now here's where you create a save key. And what you need that for is when you stop partway through, if you can't finish it all at once and you need to come back later in the day, week, or month. It's your save key you put back in, so it'll bring you right to where your last spot was because it auto-saves for you. It's 4 to 8 characters. Upper lowercase letters and numbers, so it's nothing real fancy. Now this is a good information page. Normally I skip through this, but you can expand it all and it covers all sorts of different topics here. How many steps it takes, how long roughly, can I save it if you can't finish it, documents needed. This is a good one to have. So you're going to need social security number. You probably don't need alien registration number, tax returns, W-2s, bank statements, checking account, taxable investment accounts, records of untaxed income, and then your FSA ID. Now, it's really important that you have that before you get to this point, just because it's less of a headache. You don't want to be registering for that while you're doing the FAFSA also. Have it set up ahead of time. It's just one less thing to worry about. Especially because I've ran into situations where people lose their password to their FSA or can't find it, and then that's a real big headache. Next page. Now we're just going to recap this. Student information. It's nice because along the top it shows the different of the 8 sections we're going to be going through. So this is all good. Permanent mailing address, city, state, zip code, pretty standard stuff for these. Have you lived in North Dakota for 5 years? Are you a citizen? Yes. Okay, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college? For most people, And I'm going to cruise through this just doing the most common answers. Some of this can get really complicated if you're in a strange or unique situation, but we'll do what covers 95% of the people who fill out this form. So we'll go with high school diploma, and we'll be going for the first bachelor's degree. So then we'll have no for this one. College grade level will be never attended. This will be the first year. And I always say click yes to be considered for work study, even if you're not sure. It's better to have the option of taking it and then turn it down rather than try and get back into the system or talk to the financial aid office after they have you with a no. So I just click that kind of as a default. Male or female. So driver's license, state. Next is, are you a foster youth or were you at any time in the foster care system? Most people will have a no, but click a yes if you were. High school completed by parent number 1 and parent number 2. So just click the appropriate one there. All right, and what's nice to see, whenever you switch sections, you'll get this notification at the top. Application was successfully saved, so it's handy that it does that for you. What was the name of your high school? Oak Grove. And then the state. Now, it's interesting here, when it matches up what you put in with particular school names, and this will happen later on when you're entering colleges, it doesn't always match up with what you type in specifically because it's looking for an exact match, but it does give a list of potential matches. So I put in Oak Grove Lutheran. It's technically Oak Grove Lutheran School is what they have. So click select. Next screen. Do you know the college's federal school code? No. So we're going to do an example of looking for Concordia. Minnesota. Moorhead. Concordia. And then it brings up Concordia School. Moorhead. Now you're going to want to put in as many schools as you want. You can have up to 10 on this, and if you have more, can get into that later, but up to 10 usually covers most people. But you will play the kind of matching game if you're trying to find a specific school. You just might have to try 1 or 2 or 3 different ways to phrase it. And then it'll ask for the housing plan you're interested in doing. So I will just click on campus. It is nice they do give you a little bit of college info if you want to look at something a little closer. This really isn't something you can find this stuff online, multiple sites, but it is kind of nice that they have it here. Close. And then next. All right, successfully saved again, so we're on to dependency status. So this is still the student information. Now, it's important to pay attention to this up here. It's still student information. That'll change to parent information, and it can happen sometimes where people don't notice that, and they get confused as to whose information they should be putting in. So single for most of you. Do you now have or will you have children? Most of you will have no. Any dependents other than your children or spouse? Most will click no. And then, so it autofills those. Then we'll go down to number in college. We'll just assume it's the only student in college. So go with 1. Do you want to answer questions about your parents? We will go with yes. Now, it auto-saved again, and it did switch to parent information. In the past, it was color coordinated, so the background frame it would change color to let you know when you were going from student to parent. Fortunately, they took that out, but just pay attention so you know who you're dealing with or whose information you're wanting to put in. So marital status, we'll just go with married. When did your parents get married? This is an interesting one to make. It can be awkward if somebody forgets their anniversary. Let's go with 01/2004. So a heads up, you're going to need to know this. Okay, just put in some dummy information here, but it's Social Security, parents' last name, initial, date of birth, and then an email address for them. Okay, now this is interesting too. This can throw people off. When you click next and it looks like you're doing the exact same thing again, it's for the other parent, but it doesn't really make that very obvious. And I've seen where people will re-put in the first parent's information a second time. What happens is it causes an error at the end where it'll sense the two exact same social security numbers and it'll flag it when you're trying to finish up. So make sure you pay attention that it's the other parent now. All right, put in some generic information next. Have your parents lived in North Dakota for at least 5 years? I'll put yes. Now this can get tricky if there's mixed families or divorced remarried, or if there's someone they're providing financial support for who's not technically a family member but lives with them. But for this one, we're going to put 2 other students. So that will be a total family of 5. And then it also asks how many will be in college at the same time, and that's going to be really important for when they calculate your expected family contribution, because the more students you have in school, the lower that'll be. If you have 2 in school, it gets cut in half. So it can be a really big deal when you have multiple students in school at the same time. All right, we're on to the parents' financials. Now here, when I mentioned earlier, some of the things you really need to do is plan ahead. This is very important when it comes to the financials, especially with the assets, because they're going to ask for things that you could plan ahead to have less. So you want to make yourself look as poor as possible on paper. So it's very similar to doing your taxes. So knowing what they're going to look at and what they won't, and then trying to adjust what you have to get as low of an EFC as possible. So I'll click already completed. Just do the 1040, that's the most common. Married filed jointly. Now, here's the nice part. There is a link to the IRS where you can just put in your information and it'll directly download your tax information. I didn't recommend this right when they started it because there were some issues, but now it's pretty secure and it's nice and easy. You avoid any typos or mistakes as you're entering. So I would suggest doing this. Since I'm going to go around that, I'm just going to click no thanks. I'm going to put in some basic information. How much did parent 1 earn from working? So wages, salaries, tips in 2019. Now this is also important because they do prior year, they call it. So even though you're looking at going to school in 2021-22 school year, they're going to look at your taxes from 2019. So I'm just going to put in a generic number there also. Another generic number just to get through here. It is nice that they give you the form and the line. It helps you do the math quick, because then you know exactly where you're going on your taxes to find this information. Now, for most of these, it's a zero or not applicable, but it is important to read through to make sure nothing applies to you. Combat pay, student college grant and scholarship aid reports, and your parents' income, education credits, untaxed portions of IRA distributions. So if you do make a contribution to a retirement account that you get a tax deduction for, this form's going to add that back into your income. Tax exempt. So I'm just going to click 0 for all of those. This is something you're going to want to spend the time and make sure you have the info in right, though. Here's another one. Did your parents have any of the following items in 2019? Child support, earnings from work under a cooperative education program, taxable earnings from a need-based employer program such as federal work study. Now, I'm just going to put 0 just for ease on these, but again, make sure these don't apply for you before you put 0. Again, child support received for all children, housing, food, and other living allowances. Yeah, just go through these line by line. Most of the time they don't apply, but just be sure. Okay, now we're into the asset side, and this is where a little planning ahead can literally save you thousands of dollars. Because they're going to ask what's your total current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts. So I'm just going to put in 10,000. But knowing that for every $1,000 that you have in checking, savings, taxable investments, these types of things, it's going to count against the financial aid at a maximum of 5.64%. So for every 1,000 you have, you're actually losing about $56 in financial aid, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have 10,000, you're losing $564. If you have more than that, it just grows and grows. But that's also per year. So if there's a way you can have that lowered, you're going to be qualifying for more financial aid. And then depending on the school and their quality and type of financial aid, you're either going to get more loans or you could get more scholarships and grants. So investments, they will ask about real estate, but don't put your parents' home. Now, this is one of the common mistakes I run into. People putting in their regular primary residence, and they don't want to know about that. But if you put in your equity of, $100,000 accidentally, if you don't catch this part, that's $5,640 in financial aid you've lost that year. So it's important not to do that. Here's another one I see that can be confusing and people can make mistakes. Putting in what your current business or investment farms are. But it's important to note this part. Don't include a family farm or a family business with 100 or fewer full-time or full-time equivalent employees. And 100 full-time employees is a pretty big small business. So just leave it blank. Also, you do have to own 51%, more than 50% of the business or the farm in order to not count it. Okay, now we're on to the student financials. This is very similar to the parents, but they're just looking at the students alone. And the tricky thing about that is where parents' money will be assessed at 5.64% at a maximum. A student's money in a checking and savings will be 20%. So it can be really, really bad if you're saving a lot of money in the student's name. That can wipe out a lot of financial aid right away. So it just takes some planning ahead of time, sitting down, getting that all straightened out, because they really only care about the day you hit submit on the FAFSA form. That's when they look at the assets. They could be in there the week before and the week after, but if they're not there when you hit submit, that's the important part. So I'll do it 1040 for the student. Click single. You can also do the link to IRS here for the students, which I would recommend. It's just a little quicker. And since we have to put it in manually, I'll just put in Okay, you indicated that you filled. Did you file a Schedule 1? We'll click no. Okay, again, they do give you the lines you're dealing with if you're looking at your taxes. So 1040 line 14 minus Schedule 2 line. Click next. See, and this is what happens if you don't fill in a necessary field. It turns red and it lets you know fairly obviously. So it's going to put a placeholder there. Okay, and they're going to ask the same questions they asked for the parent, where for most people these are a 0. But just be sure and go through each one just in case there is something there. And again here, child support, cooperative education program, federal work study. Again with these, just make sure you go through them. Okay, now it does ask if you want to skip questions about your assets, but I'll put no just so we can see them. So it's very basically what they ask the parents to. Balance of cash, checking, savings, net worth of your investments, including real estate, net worth of current business. So I'm going to just leave those as 0 to go through this. And there it's flagging us again. So you got to put something. I will just put 400. I believe you can put 0 in there too. Oops. Yep, so 0 does work also. Okay, sign and submit. Are you a tax preparer? Unless you are, which it is very rare to be doing these, but some do. Click no. Then this is your chance to recap everything. You can look through all of your answers, all the different sections, just to double check. And then when you get to the bottom, I would suggest that you print this page also. It's nice to have handy. Okay, before proceeding to the signature, click agree. It's a good idea to just read that real quick. It's not very long. Okay, so this is as far as I can go without actually submitting something, but this is where you're going to need your FSA ID. So this is asking for the students first. FSA ID and password. Then you click sign, and then it'll also ask for the parents in addition. So you each will have your own FSA ID. And then you get to the confirmation page, and then you should be good. Now this was just a fast run through. I can't stress this enough though, that planning ahead and knowing what's on here, especially when it comes to your assets, that can be huge in qualifying for more financial aid than you normally would. There is one last thing I would recommend also, and that is to either print off hard copies or print to file, save a digital copy of your checking, savings, investment accounts, all of those on the day that you hit submit for the FAFSA. Because about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 do get flagged for follow-up questions. And it's just really, really handy to have those values from that day saved rather than have to go back and look up what everything was worth on a specific day. So, yeah, keep copies of things. Thanks for joining me on this quick trip through the 2021-22 FAFSA. If you have any questions or would like to know more about how you can plan ahead before you hit submit, I can be reached at info@gocollegesmart.com, or you can give me a call at 701-793-9242. Thank you.